It's not hard. If you've got money coming in, you just need to make sure that less money is going out. It doesn't help to put your head in the sand.
A lot of people do it. Like I did it for years.
I always tell people marriage counselling is extra, all right? So go and get specific advice about your own situation. Yeah. Not everything's about money.
G'day guys, welcome back to another cracking episode of Level Up. This one today is going to be an absolute cracker. I know I say that all the time, but today I have with me a good mate of mine. I've actually been thinking about the last couple of days. I think I've known you for probably getting close to 22 odd years now, maybe.
Yep.
Maybe even 24.
Yeah, back when you had all your fingers.
But just let him know that I've cut my finger off. But anyway, look, today for you, I've got my mate Jeff Gear from Home Loans Made Easy, world-renowned financial broker.
Steady up.
But multi-award winning has helped me get a lot of stuff throughout the years, and definitely I chew his ear off quite often. But the reason I wanted to get Jeff on today is because I know finance, numbers, data, super, all that stuff that we have to do and should do is something that gets neglected a little bit in the building industry. So for the next hour or so, we're going to be talking about finance and what you need to do and how you should do it and what you need to look out for and all those types of things. So how are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Very good. I warn people I love this stuff. So once I get going, I might talk about it too much. So
yeah. So you've got to. So just got to do a little disclaimer, haven't you?
I do have to do a disclaimer because I did get a rap on the. Well, I got instructions. I had to do this. So the stuff that we're going to talk about is general in nature only. Does not take into account people's individual circumstances. And one of the issues with what we do is that everyone's situation is completely different. So you're going to have people who are listening who all ends of the scale, people who are starting out, people who are finishing, and not one situation sits everyone. So hopefully what we talk about will touch enough for lots of people, but go and get specific advice about your own situation.
Yeah. Well, we'll touch on a little bit of everything today because like over the years, Jeff's helped me out with everything from investments to personal developments to our own homes to vehicles, business, like you name it. So you know it all. So mate, what's like for people out there, like a lot of people, you know a lot of my story.
Yep.
And you know I went through some tough times, and we've obviously managed to turn that around, and we now run a really professional business. But like number one is you've got to have your head around your numbers a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, it is. Look, the word that we use is a budget, and everyone hates it because what that sounds like is what don't I spend? But whether it's a personal budget or a business budget, but just knowing it's not hard. If you've got money coming in, you just need to make sure that less money is going out. If you make $100 and you spend $99, that's still okay because you'll be in the black. But if you make $100 and you spend $101, that's going to become a problem over time. So, and if you don't know, like doing a budget together, it's hard with business. But again, regardless of which end of the scale you're on, if you can follow that through, you'll be far better off. So.
Yeah, so just taking the time at like you said, it doesn't matter which level, like whether you're a one-man band, you're contracting to someone else, or you're a builder running a big business, like you have to know what's coming in and what's going out.
Yeah, you do, and you can do that in a number of different ways. Like it depends if at the higher level you'll need support with accountants and staff and things. But if you're an individual, the government has some websites that are free. They're good. It's called Money Smart. You can go there, and they've got free budgeting tools on there. And if you sit down and you go through that, sometimes when you first do it, there can be a few tears because it comes out in the red. But again, it doesn't help to put your head in the sand. Like if you actually know what's coming in, with all the cost of living pressures that people are facing, I'm just talking more and more about budgeting with people all the time. Yeah,
I know one of my things that. Like I always wanted everything too soon. And
You're not alone, mate.
But like I remember like through my 20s, like I'd be ringing you every few weeks. Oh, I found this idea. Oh, I want to buy this. Oh, I want to do that. And you'd sort of say, oh, yeah, that's not going to happen. Or, oh, look, if you want to do that, you need to do this. So even though there was things that I haven't been able to do in the early days, it was just good to have someone to be able to talk to and run ideas past. And that's where a broker is better, isn't it? Because if you build a personal relationship with someone, you can ring them up and ask questions and
definitely
gain some knowledge.
And look, most of my clients have become friends, because we do. You want to find someone who's willing to tell you the truth. So there's plenty of salespeople out there that will just put the sales hat on and want to tell you what you want to hear because they want to do business. What you really want is someone who's going to work with you and again, in a reasonable way, listen, understand why is Dwayne asking me this question? Is this something that I should just automatically say no to? Well, no, let me just hear why and then work through. And if it's a step beyond what we can do right now, we talk about, well, we can't do this now, and this is the reason that you can't do it now. But if you want to plan for it, this is what we have, and we did that a number of times.
A lot of times.
Yeah, fickle. But you told me what you wanted to do, and we went through and said, well, we can't do it now for these reasons, but this is what you will have to do to make that a reality. And to your credit, you always listened to that, absorbed it, and would come back to me, and we'd be doing what you wanted next.
Yeah, well, or I just went completely off it. Being able to run ideas by you, in a 10-minute conversation, you would give me enough information to go, well, yeah, no, that's a shit idea. We won't run with that anymore. But I think the other thing that's been really beneficial for me and very valuable, in the earlier days, probably before I met Camille and settled down a little bit, it was more about the toys. So you helped me out by several toys over the years, and at the time it was just I was just living life and having fun, and I didn't realise how buying those toys was affecting my borrowing capacity. And then when it did come time to settle down and start investing in property and houses, and even there's been a few times where we wanted to do our own developments back in the early days, and we weren't able to do them because there was too much debt tied to toys.
The toys, which the toys are great too, by the way.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, we had a fantastic time with them, but if I didn't have that relationship with you and be able to bounce those ideas around, I wouldn't know. And I was actually only having this conversation with another mate last week. One of his clients, quite a wealthy client, was trying to buy more commercial property, and they told him that because he had two Mercedes, and because those two Mercedes alone were reducing his borrow capacity by whatever it was, $600,000 or $700,000, and even though the cars were only worth $120,000, $140,000 each,
because of the repayments, monthly repayments on them. Yeah.
So it's something I've definitely learned through everything in business and life. You've got to, once you know more about the bigger picture, it gives you a lot of clarity to be able to make better decisions. Yeah,
look, I say to people, your choices will lead. I have this conversation all the time. So the choices that you make, in the end, everyone will have an opinion for you. You should do this or that, but in the end, it actually only matters. Your opinion's the only one that matters. It's the only one I really want to listen to. If you want to buy toys and not invest, that's a decision that you can make. But if you understand the choices that you're making, and you can work with somebody, and just find someone that's got a grey beard and been doing it for a little while. But if you find someone who can work with you on those scenarios, what that will do is just always make sure that when you're making those decisions, you're doing it with knowledge. So if you decide to buy a boat or a caravan or the fanciest four-wheel drive in town, that's okay, as long as you understand what that will do to your other decision making and what your priorities are. And sometimes our wives can have different priorities. I always tell people marriage counselling is extra, right? So, but yes, yeah.
But it's important. I see a lot of tradies. I remember how I built a very successful carpentry business at a young age, and I went a bit silly for a little while and spent money on things that, looking back now, I wouldn't have. But I had a great time, but I see I look around now, just driving around sites and stuff, and I see so many young tradies, like early 20s, and they've all got brand new they're driving around in $100,000 to $200,000 like four-wheel drives, fully kitted out.
Yeah.
And I see it like, is it an image thing, or everyone's trying to sort of keep up with each other or whatever? But look at them and think, like, do you know how that's affecting the rest of your life, like when it comes to purchasing property or settling down?
Yeah, look, one of the challenges that we're facing right now is we've come out of an incredibly low interest rate environment, and an incredible amount of money flowing through the system. So a lot of my younger clients are not afraid of debt. They haven't been through recessions or GFCs or things that we talk about. Like, they've heard the names, but they've never actually had to live that. And when they're making the decisions, my problem is I've got too many stories, but
well, we got lots of time.
Yeah, but look, so one of the this is a young client who was a tradie rang me, talked about needing to buy a new Ranger. We just got them into a house, and they were having their first baby. And I said to them, it's too early. Like, you can't pick the cheapest car that you can make work. Then make that work. And I hung up, like expecting them to heed my advice. The next call that I got from them, they'd gone to a car yard, they'd borrowed $65,000 to buy a Ranger, and the repayments were killing them. So in 6 months, they hadn't realised the effect. They hadn't done a budget. They didn't listen to that advice that we talked about. But the problem, once you've got the debt, is like selling the car. They're not going to get enough to pay it out. The penalty, it's actually quite a hard situation now, because they didn't do that. And things have changed dramatically. So anyone who's had any of your tradies who've got fixed rate loans, they will have either been coming off them or about to come off them, and the rates are going from a 2 point something to 6 point something, and what that does in terms of those repayments is significant. So again, all my clients who I have a chance to talk to, I talk about, let's not put our head in the sand. Let's just start to have a look. If that's going to be another $200 a week that you got to find, then let's start to work out a way to do that before it becomes reality. Because the bank's not going to, it's going to come. Like, it's going to come that you're going to have to.
Someone, I think it was maybe 6 or 8 months ago, I was having a conversation with someone, and they were saying, like, there's this whole, like, similar to what you just said, like there's this whole age bracket that, correct me if I'm wrong, like from 2010, 12 to almost 2020 or so, there was no interest rate rise.
Yes.
So people bought houses, they bought cars, they bought investment properties at reasonably low rates, and just that's where they stayed. And so they just got used to paying these repayments, and then obviously all of a sudden things change, and like after 10 years of paying the same thing, they've started to see these interest rate rises creep up, and they're like freaking out, like, what's going on? Like, this isn't meant to happen. But
yeah, well, during COVID, rates got cut to historic lows. So obviously that was 2020, and interest rates were, not only were there not rate rises, there were significant rate cuts. And the whole idea behind that was there was stimulus, there was rate cuts, and the idea was that the government wanted to get us to spend again and spend aggressively so that the economy would recover. And their plan worked, but it worked too well. Yeah. And so we all get used to spend, like, we get used to the shackles were off, cheap money, like 2%. Like, what that means is for every $10,000 you borrow, you're paying $200 interest for a whole year. Like, it's just nuts, right?
Yeah. So there was cars at,
yeah,
0%.
Yeah. So just go and buy, go and spend, but we're coming back. Like, so the challenge is now the government's trying to slow that down because inflation is high, but it's it's actually more about we get used to it. And the challenge again is that there's people like me and maybe some of your parents, or depending who's listening, but people who are older, some of them will have no debt, so it won't matter what rates do. They've done very well out of their investments and over the last decades. And so the choices that your parents can make are different to what you can make starting out.
Yeah.
And I often say to my first homeowners when I'm chatting to them that a lot of them want to start where their parents finished. But talk to your parents about what they, when they bought their first home, they wouldn't have had fancy furniture. Some of them would have had bean bags and not chairs. And
well, it's a huge problem now, I think, with social media, isn't it? Like, everyone wants the end goal straight away. Like, we see it with young people. They straight away want the 4-bedroom, double garage, 4-bathroom house. Like, it's like, what my first few houses were. Like, well, up until like our last couple of houses, like our houses were all 80, 90 square metres, old fibro houses that we renovated and worked in. But everyone wants the good stuff straight away.
It's human nature.
Yeah.
And look, I tell people my role's not to shatter your dreams. And it's never, whenever you've rung me with your ideas. So find someone you can, because again, people listening, there'll be this massive range of some people. It's okay to buy a new Ranger, and probably you should, but then there's other people who now's not the right time.
Yeah, and like on that with the COVID and stuff, I know some people that have done it. And I think it's one thing you've always been very good at guiding me with. Like, don't use equity in your home to buy toys.
Oh, it's so hard. So
these people that are housing prices gone through the roof. They've pulled all this equity out, gone and bought the big American truck and the flash caravans, and spent $2, $3, $4, $500,000 of their equity out of their homes on things that are in 5 years' time are worth half of what they paid for them. It's nuts.
And again, the sales, there's actually so everything that you see on TV, like who watches TV now, but all the ads, all the social media, everything is designed to make you want the next step. And people are always choosing, when you've got the ability to do it, and then the choice is, do you want to do it or not? And I joke with people. I say, look, the more you borrow, the better for me. The more I get paid. But if people who know me know that the less you owe, the happier I am. My first goal for everyone is to be debt free on their own home, and we talk about how we could do that, achieve those goals. But when people are pulling out that equity, some people paid, $500,000 for a house 3 years ago. That house is now worth $750,000, $800,000, and the bank will let you owe $600,000. You can owe, rather than even the deposit that you've made. You're exactly right. The bank will give you. They're happy to give you the money, and there's a reason that Commonwealth Bank makes $10 billion profit in a year. Yeah. They know how to make money, and that is very happy to keep lending to people who want to buy stuff. Yeah.
So, mate, for people out there that are at all sorts of levels, because it's not something I was ever taught, and it's only through obviously becoming mates with you and then chewing your ear off all the time. What is something what should people be striving to, what's a minimum people need to have in place to look at getting finance? Let's create an example. A tradie out there that's maybe got their own, got their principal place of residence, and they want to start maybe getting an investment property or something. What's the minimum requirements the bank's going to be looking for?
Yeah, well, obviously, again,
every situation is different.
But in that, one of the things I do talk to people, and this is a great time. So we're coming up to 30 June, and all my self-employed people, I say, look, when you do your tax return, as of, when you're working with your accountant and you're doing your tax return, if you're self-employed, you're going to get one pay slip that's going to last for 18 months. So what you do when you lodge that tax return, every time you go back to a bank now for the next 12 or 18 months, that's what they're going to look at. And so just work with your broker or your bank, whoever you're talking to, and get them to, when your accountant sends you the draft tax return to sign, just forward that to your broker. Get them to have a look at it, because there's a whole pile of, so the one that I use as an example when I'm talking to people is the way that we write off cars. So there's two ways that the accountants do it. One is they claim depreciation and interest, and the other is they do a cents per kilometre method. Now, when you talk to your accountant, all they're focused on is tax, because that's what you're paying them for, and that's what they should be focused on. But and they might come back to you and say, hey, look, the cents per kilometre method is the best for you and you'll get more back on your tax. But if you do the depreciation and interest, the bank will add the depreciation back. So it'll actually increase your borrowing capacity in a simple twist. Both options are fine. And if you're working with if you get your broker to look at it, they can give you that feedback to your accountant before you sign it, before you lodge it, before you're stuck with your payslip for a year. The other part is that you can talk about those ideas. I'd like to buy an investment property, and there's a bit of a tension between how much, when you write off all of your expenses, it's great for tax, but and there'll be a lot of your people nodding, listening to this, because it's not great for borrowing.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah. So, and that tension is always just something to work with. There are low doc loans and stuff, but they come with a cost. So
higher fees and interest rates and stuff. But again, that's stuff that I've learnt off you. And I guess that's another good thing to talk about. Like you and I talk about having a team. Like in my Live Like Build business, we talk about it a lot. Like you've got to create it. We call it a pack process. You create a team with the builder, designer, the homeowner, all the consultants, and I'd like to talk about, that's what I do with my life now. Like, we have meetings together. Like, yourself, our accountant, we all sit down. Like Camille and I throw our goals on the table, what we want to achieve, what we want to do, investments. Like super now has sort of become a bigger subject that we're getting older. But having everybody involved, because I never understood the value of it. But like you just said, like having those team conversations. Yeah. Yes, it might be good on paper to try and just write as much off as possible and pay less tax, but as you said, that's going to affect our borrowing capacity. So is it better to leave some of that on the table and pay a bit more tax, which is going to increase what we can borrow and allow us to reach our goals more? And then once we reach, like you buy investments, you're going to get income from those investments. So, and then you end up with more assets that you can depreciate. And
look, that just really, the team is the right word. So you just need to be working with, so if you talk to, and again, this is tricky, but if you talk to your bank or your broker and they don't seem to be understanding, then ask for a second, like go and find someone else that you can talk to, because you really need, if this is if you're listening to this and you're a person who would like to, you want to plan ahead, again, what you do on this tax return that's about to come is going to carry you right through to, like in a year from now when you're wanting to buy a car or upgrade your house or whatever you want to do, the banks are going to go back to that tax return. So whatever we've done now lasts for such a long time that it's actually, you have to, in some ways, if you're self-employed, definitely think a little bit about the next step rather than just get there and hope it all works. So
I laugh, like I don't listen to the radio, I watch the news anymore, but when I hear people talk about it, I just laugh and think, man, like I'm so glad I've changed that mentality. Like leading up to the end of financial year, like all these ads on the radio and people like spend money, save on tax. Like, so two things, like you physically have to have the money to spend on whatever it is, the new tools and new vehicles or whatever. So you're going to go out and throw this money at purchasing something just so you can save
30 cents.
30 cents.
You spend $1 to get 30 cents back. So,
and again, like a lot of people do it. Like I did it for years. I remember like being told, oh, look, it's coming up end for financial, you're going to make a lot of money, go and spend it. Yeah.
Look, there is a tension because you don't want to pay more tax than you should. And in our conversations, that's always been something that I'm very focused. If there's a way to do things that's tax friendly, then again, just make sure you're talking to someone who understands, and that's something that's important. But if you get your financier and your accountant working together and having a conversation, you'll find that a whole pile easier, long term, as you're borrowing.
Yeah. So, like, if someone's thinking about going to the bank and getting something, like a lot of the time now, it's minimum 2 years or something, isn't it, for most self-employed?
Yeah, well, this is where it gets really... So the standard with, as a broker, you're licensed with 26 different banks, so you've got 26 different rules. So the standard is that everyone wants 2 years financials. There's a lot of banks that will rely on just 1 year's financials now if it's a clear full 12 months and it's straightforward. There's even some banks that, and then we can move into what I called it low doc, but it's actually called alternate verification, where you could use BAS statements or bank statements to verify your income rather than tax returns. But if you've got 2 clear full years, then you'll have access to more banks. If you've only got 1 year, that'll cut the number of banks you got access to down. And then if we get into the alternate verification, and I actually do very few of those. I work with my clients very hard, because if we don't have to pay rates that are 1% higher, that, I know there's lots of people who just that's what they write because it's easy. Whereas I'd actually rather work with the client and say, look, if we work towards this and we can get past 30 June and we can get a tax return, then we can do this at an interest saving for you.
Yeah. Oh, it's so beneficial building relationships with someone like yourself, Jeff. And we've done things over the years where we've had, to get in and get the deal done, we've had to go with a higher interest rate, and then once the deal's been done or we've finished the development, we've refinanced. And so, again, without having that relationship, having that team, that stuff just isn't achievable.
Yes.
I think it's so valuable for people to be able to, a lot of people out there, I feel, would just be going to the car yard or going to the bank and probably, I don't know, maybe not even thought about going to a broker.
Oh, yeah, look, brokers write, I can't remember, it's like 75% or something. 70% of all lending is done through a broker now.
Yeah, right.
So, it's of home loan lending.
Yeah.
But commercial lending, I think they do 20 or 30%. So, and most people do just go straight to the bank for that sort of stuff. Car lending is, probably 50-50. I don't do much car lending. But look, again, everyone's need is different. I've got people ring me all the time, and I'm like, no, just go back to the car yard. I'm actually happy for you to do that stuff. But I'd rather, again, if you're working with someone whose best interest is, so again, and I'm going to say this in a way, but if I know that if I always focus on the client and do what's right for the client, then I'll actually do more loans than someone who's out trying to do what's right for them and not look after a client. Yeah. And I know it's just the way that I've always worked. And so whenever anyone rings me, I always, if the right thing for you to do is to do it through a car yard, or it's to go directly to a bank for some reason. I've had clients who've had fixed rates with banks, and I've said, look, you need to go back to that bank, and you can't deal with me. And but I know that those clients will actually then always come back. So, and if you're working with someone and that's what you're hearing, then you've got the right person on your side.
Yeah. So, mate, what about structures? Structures definitely can muck you up, I've learned over the years.
All my tradie friends, I've got lots of clients who are tradies, some of my favourite people, and structures are often what happens is on the job site people talk, and so
that's it does happen. Mate, they don't anymore because nothing shits anymore. I turn up the site and everyone's just scrolling, and they're all sitting around on their phone just looking at shit.
See, it's changed.
Yeah,
because it used to be that everyone talked on there. It's the old people like me, and and what happens is I'll get a phone call and someone will be like, I need to do this in a company or a trust, or I've got to do it in and when you drill down, this is one where you do need to get specific advice, because company and trusts and self-managed super funds and all sorts of different structures can be right for lots of different circumstances, and you and I have worked through that with your stuff a lot, but it's not right for everyone. And there's again, too many stories, but just recently I had a fairly high level guy rang me and he was like, I want to do it this way. And I asked him, well, why do you want to do that? And in a company trust, and he was explaining it to me, and I guided him back to his solicitor and accountant, and they couldn't agree, because the solicitor was focused on asset protection and the accountant was focused on tax. And when he'd told me what he wanted to do, I explained to him, this is what they're going to be looking at, and you have to work out which is more important. Do you want to pay less tax, or do you want to have the asset protection? Because one will tick the box and the other won't. And when he got it, he actually went with a completely different structure that I suggested, and both the accountant and solicitor are sort of happy. But it doesn't like, it depends what your priorities are as to
and that's where
which
it pays
structure.
to have the team.
Right.
Have the conversations with multiple people.
And I step out and say, you get your big baseball bat and, have a fight, and whoever wins, when you come back to me, I get the easy bit right alone. So,
but it is hard. Like, it's hard to know everything, and that's why we do this podcast. Like, it's getting information out there, and
I don't know everything. I tell people I don't even pretend to know everything. There's parts of a lot of my history, but I'm not very good at agribusiness. In actual fact, I'm not only not good at it. Anytime people ring me about agribusiness, I'm like, I'm not your person. It's not what I'm good at. And you want someone who's willing to be truthful. Like, we all think we're fantastic. It's a builder who doesn't. There's
we are fantastic. Like, you've won what award? You've won some awards with the home loan stuff, haven't you?
I have.
Quite a few.
So. Look, I'm in a small group. So in my group, I'm in the top. I've been in the top 10 in Australia for a number of years, and number 1 in Queensland for a while as an individual broker for my group. There's
which is awesome, mate. Like,
thank you.
Got to give yourself a pat on the back. It's good to that's why we get people on the podcast that are best at what they do, mate, because we spread the good information.
I don't know about best. How about I just say I'm okay? All right. I'm okay.
Like, I don't know, can we take it up a notch and talk about, like, because I know a lot of traders and builders think that, like, the goal is to get to their own developments and not have to deal with clients and things. Like,
you
do a bit of that type of lending.
Yep.
And again, I wouldn't be able to have done some of the things we've done without having someone like yourself around, just knowing some little tricks and hints. But
that's a really good one. So the words owner builder in banks, and anyone who's tried to do this will know, is pretty hard. They set the bar incredibly high for all my owner builders, which doesn't make any sense. Dwayne can build a house for me.
When you say owner builder, like, builders building their own properties, not people going and do an owner builder course. Builders. That's right. So, but the problem is the banks treat it the same way. Yeah.
So even though you've got your own license and they're happy for you to build houses for anybody else, as soon as you want to do it for yourself, they set a different bar, and it's crazy. And so again, you just need to be, if that's something that you want to work towards, then you need to, the bar will be higher, and you've experienced that when we've done some things. So, and then you just got to get through that. It's a time thing. So it's a staged. We do it under this bit initially, and then we move on to something else. Yeah. But all of those people, if you want to do your own developments and work through it,
because there's all sorts of stuff comes in. Hey, like the unit, one of the unit developments we've done, like. Depending on a box we ticked, like, affected GST and like,
which is where your accountant is really important to have them on board. How you're doing that. If you're doing a development, your accountant is actually one of the really super important. You want to, again, be talking to someone who seems like they know when you're asking questions, they're giving you good answers. Like they're not going.
Well, knowing what I know now, that my best advice to anybody that's thinking about doing their own development would be talk to the broker, your accountant, and your solicitor or lawyer before you even go and make an offer on anything, because like it change, like depending on the purchasing person you put on the contract or all types of things. Like it might not change when you purchase a property, but it can change the
when you
profits
sell the back
like dramatically.
Dramatically, yeah, that's right. Big numbers, yeah. And look, when you were talking, so the challenge a little bit is also about timing of when. So a few years, like we are in a cycle. So property moves in cycles. So one of the challenges after we've had such a big rise like we've just had is that everyone is still in the honeymoon phase of, we buy property and we make money and this guy did this, and all those stories that you hear, like that
everyone ring and tell them to you. Hey, I know this guy's just done this. I want to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, but we work through a cycle where that all has been good, like that works. Whereas the last time we had a growth like we've just experienced in Brisbane was the years 2000 to 2006. There was a 6-year period there where we had a very high lot of growth, and where 2020 to 2024, we've had a very high growth. So that 4-year period. What came at the back of that growth was a period we called GFC, and developers and people, like there was a lot of people, like the rubber band stretched. And right now, if you're super cashed up, I have no problems with people doing development. But if you're trying to stretch and borrow a lot to get into a development, I would be working with my clients very much to heed caution at the moment. Not to say you can't do it, but just you want to make sure there's a good margin in what you're doing, is what I'd be... Yeah. Like the cycle at the moment is one that... It'd be something that you'd be planning for rather than doing.
But yeah, planning is everything, isn't it? Like you have to have those conversations with other people and talk to them about what your goals are.
Yeah, definitely.
Like I said, like it makes a big difference to the final profits depending on the identity that you purchase the property in right at the beginning. And if you don't think about it before you go and purchase a property or go to an auction or...
Get the margin scheme sorted out for the GST on the land. Yeah.
Like, so can you dive into that a little bit? Like what the margin scheme, like, because that affects...
No, well, you've got to go talk to your accountant for that one. but yeah, so it basically is, because when you buy a residential property, there's no GST, but then when you convert it to a commercial property, there is. And so once you do a development, you'll be triggering a GST component. And so you need to make sure you work with your accountant when you're buying the residential property up front to make sure that the back end is protected.
And that applies to... Does that apply to only if you're making it a multi-dwelling property, or even if you're just doing a flip or a renovation on a property? Yeah,
so this is where it gets really confusing, and I tell people go and talk to your accountant, and maybe we shouldn't do this on a podcast, but the ATO...
It's all just general.
No, that's right.
So hopefully, like, the idea is that this gives people enough information. They go and talk to their accountant.
Yeah, definitely. So if you go and read the ATO website, and it talks about if you are... there's actually examples where it says if you're a builder and you're buying a property and flipping it, then technically it would fall under those rules, that it's a development and you've got to pay GST and all these sorts of things. And everyone listening is going, that can't be right. But the reality is, if you buy an investment property and it's residential and you choose to, if you do one, you're probably going to be okay, depending what your accountant says.
Yeah.
You bought an investment, you renovated it, you sold it. But if you start to do that more than once, you might find that you'll get a knock on the door if you ever get audited or something. But the example on the tax website that I just guide people to the ATO website. because again, I'm not licensed to give tax advice in any way, shape or form. And so you should just go and read that. But the example that's there would actually say that, yes, you would open yourself up for that.
Yeah. So the margin scheme's a real thing, and if you haven't ever heard of it before, go and
Talk
do some homework. And,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, do some homework on it. Talk to your accountant and see, because it makes a massive difference. Like especially if you're talking
multiple dwellings. It does. Yeah.
Like it adds up really quick, and it definitely affects the final outcome that you put in your pocket. So
yeah. And I will say that is one of those areas that's not my area of expertise. And if there is any accountants who are listening to this and say that that's not quite right, please listen to your accountant and not to Jeff or Dwayne.
No, we're just talking about like making people think.
But it is one of those things where I would, like, I'm not really all over it. So, yeah.
I just like getting information out there, mate, because I know. Like the only reason I've managed to get to where I am is from like just talking to people and asking questions and learning. And we've had some, as you know, we've had some very expensive lessons over the years, and we've had to learn the hard way. And it's funny, someone said it to me the other day. I can't remember what it was, but they'd done something wrong on a job, and it was a big stuff up. Like it was a couple $100,000, and
ouch.
They basically just said, "Oh, well, we're putting that down to education fees."
Yes.
And when you think about what people pay to go to uni or whatever for 2, 3, 4 years, like a lot of tradies do have expensive
lessons
along the way, because the only way we learn is if you ask questions of other people, or you look up to, like, you find mentors or whoever to look up to and learn from. But yeah, if it wasn't having conversations with people like yourself, obviously, like you personally know our accountant, we've got a great relationship with them. You've got to get good people around you, don't you, to be able to be successful.
Definitely. And look, lots of my tradies have, they're good at, like I couldn't build a house, right? So, no one's going to come to me and ask for advice on how to build a house, but so when I annoy you when I need to get stuff done. And it's the same. Like, no one can know everything. So you find people who are good at what they do, and then you work with them to make that work. And I look, a lot of my tradies have a bit of a hole in their super, because if they're self-employed, they haven't. So it also at some point, working with a financial planner becomes important, or there's another level of, advice there as well that needs to, and it's maybe not for people starting out, but, if you're in your
It's definitely
40s.
something I didn't, and again, it was just who I was, like, as the bosses I had doing my time and growing up, and then like even like my old man's a tradie, and like he doesn't have super or anything, like you just, so you don't really think anything of it. And whereas now, like, we take it really seriously. Like, all of our guys in our team all get paid super and work cover and salaries and all that. Like, it's all done properly.
Yep.
And I know in our industry, it's something that there's still a lot of gaps out there, like you're saying. A lot of people aren't doing it, but like, you have to be putting stuff away, like money away, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And when I look at my when I'm talking to my clients who are self-employed, one of the things I'm always looking at is looking at their super. And even if it's not something that I address, like if they're in their 20s and we're starting out, then we might not address it straight away. But it's always something that I'm working with them on, in terms of saying, look, if we can't wait till we're old like me and get to, in your 50s and then go, oh, gee, I should sort out my super, because it won't work. Like, we need time to start to think through that, because over time, there are ways, like you can borrow in your super, you can, like there's things that you can do to help bridge that gap if you haven't been putting money away.
Yeah, I definitely wish I had got into it sooner. Like, as you know, like, we're trying to do stuff in our super now, self-managed super fund, but I wish I had ramped it up a lot sooner than I did. Like, I don't know if it's like, since I've turned 40, I'm like, holy shit. Like,
well, you're still young enough. Like, you've still got 20 years in your, in your time. Like, so, and again, it's a little bit like that conversation that we had at the start. Like, you can't do everything. So you've just got to choose what is most important at the time. And yeah, like I don't, and when I talk to lots of traders, will talk about their investments outside of super, and I don't have any issues with building wealth outside of super. But then at some point, the idea of starting to get some of that wealth into super is again, I'm not licensed to talk about superannuation, but superannuation is something, it has tax advantages for people long term. So
yeah, it's just about setting yourself up. Like I see it in my old man. Like tradies work their ass off their whole life, and then they don't do the super and stuff correctly, and they
get to the end. And
there's nothing to show for it.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. And again, that's not throwing stones at people. Like I know there'll be a lot of people listening who, again, it does sort of hurt a little bit when, someone who's worked in a 9-to-5 job all the time and had super since they were 20, like you've probably worked harder than some of those guys, but the way that the pay structure was, you just didn't receive super for 20 years or 30 years. So again, just trying to work, like there's no point ignoring it. It's trying to work with someone about.
But again, it's just, we're not,
told about it.
Yeah, and just educated enough. Like I think we probably get told about it, but like if you're someone like me that takes a few times of getting things told to you for it to sink in, like you don't realise the long-term benefit of it. But the thing, and I know for myself for a long time, it was more about the short-term gain of keeping that money and living life with it at that point in time, rather than putting it into an account that I couldn't do anything with. But
well, super does feel like when you're in your 20s, it does. 40 years seems like forever. So I do get that. But the effect of, the effect of compounding of interest on your interest over that period of time, getting the earlier you can start putting away stuff. Like there is no magic formula, but a little bit over a long period of time makes a massive difference.
Yeah. Mate, can we talk a little bit about what banks are looking for if people are, like they're doing all right, they've got their own home and they are thinking about maybe buying a second property or whatever? Like what's...
Yeah. So look, all banks look at two major things. So one is how much do you earn, and the other is how much income or equity do you have. And those are the two questions that you'll always be asked, whether you're buying your first home or your next home or the 10th home. Do you have enough income to pay it? And what are you going to do? How do we get our money back? The bank wants to know how they get their money back if you don't make repayments. But one of those two things will always form a ceiling for you. So it doesn't matter how much equity you have in property, if we can't prove the income, then you won't be able to do it. Doesn't matter how much income you're earning, if you don't have equity or a deposit, then you won't get the money. So you've got to be able to tick both of those two major things. But then after that, there's a whole pile of other things, like how long you've been at your job and whether you're self-employed or an employee, and the property that you're purchasing. Is it like if you're trying to buy a property in, like, I had a client today who wanted to buy a 29 square metre property, which a studio bedroom. Because he's a first home owner. Yeah. But the banks won't lend against the 29 square metre property. It's a closet, it's pretty small. That was
one of the things I tried like a long time ago. Probably 15 years ago, and you said, mate, like you need I think it was like 60 or 70% or something deposit.
Yeah, you need 60% is what they would sometimes would do, but right now, like the banks aren't even so super funds can buy them if you've got. I think this one was 240,000 or something. If you've got 240,000 in your super, you're not borrowing, you can just go and buy one and rent it out. That's fine. But
because they get good rent,
crazy rent. Yeah, that's right. And for him as a single guy, it would work fine for him to live in. But it's a bit of a problem with the banks because I call it self-fulfilling prophecies. They go, we won't lend against that. but we won't lend against it because it takes forever to sell and we can't get our money back. And well, it only takes forever to sell and get your money back because you won't lend against it.
Yeah.
If you lend against it, but it's the same if you're trying to buy 150 acres somewhere. Like, there's properties that are too small and properties that are too big,
And then, like, it gets easier the more you get, like, doesn't it? Like, once you get some rentals, like, because the rental income...
Yeah, look, it sort of does, but when you model, what's happening with the banks is they're modelling, can you do repayments if rates were 9%, not 6%? So, and the modelling of that is even when you actually get 3 or 4 properties, even my doctors and lawyers who earn lots of money, the modelling becomes really hard. Like your borrowing capacity at those ceiling, like at those, when you multiply it out over a number of properties, becomes really hard. So the getting one investment property is sort of okay, but getting 2 or 3 becomes harder. And again, you just need to work with someone because the price of them is high. Like if you're buying a property and...
Yeah. And then, like, when doing that, you've got to think about what your long-term goal is as well, don't you? Because you can either buy something in a high-growth area that's going to get a lot of capital gains very quickly, or you can buy something maybe further out in rural areas that may be a lot lower purchase price, but will be long-term rented. You'll get constant income out of it. So
all investments have 2 types of return, or most investments have 2 types of return. One is the income and the other is the growth. And with a property, it's the rental income, what we call the yield, and the capital growth is the value going up. And usually what you're doing is choosing between those 2. So properties with high yield will often have a lower capital growth, those the regional areas that you were talking about. Other properties that might have a higher capital growth will have a lower yield, like buying in Brisbane. Yeah. And the unicorn, what everyone's looking for, is something that has fantastic yield and crazy good capital growth. So when you find that, tell me where it is. Yeah, that's right. But usually, and again, working with someone, because when people are starting out, often what they have to choose is a yielding property. So that's, again, work with your broker in terms of what you can borrow. But
it's good to think outside the box, isn't it? Like, and you've taught me that as well. Like, originally we were always looking close to Brisbane and stuff, and then we've sort of spread our wings a bit and reached out. But like, you look at some of these regional towns, and like, they're screaming for investment. Like, they generally, from some of the ones we have, like, they've always got constant income, because people in town might be on welfare, or there might be mines, or there could be power stations. Like, there's a whole other world out there when you get outside the big city that has a lot of potential.
Yeah, and a lot of those choices are, it's what you're able to do. So, we all want to buy. I'd love to, put everyone in a $1.2 million house at Stafford or something. Go and buy that as an investment property, right? It's going to be great. But that's often not doable. So I tell people, look, it doesn't matter there's no point talking about what you can't do. Yeah. If you want to do it, then we just need to, again, put our thinking caps on and have a look at different areas. And you're right, like, there's actually places where, you get great yield and potentially have some all right growth, and yeah. Well,
and especially now, like, the people are just moving further and further away, like, because obviously the prices are pushing people out further,
and the growth is actually happening in those regional areas because people are being pushed out of the big cities. So there's actually not just yield, but there's also been some growth as well.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, I know a couple of my mates do big developments, and you hear some of the stuff that they have going on, like Roma, bloody Bundaberg, Rockhampton. Like, it's unbelievable the money that's getting spent on these areas, and that's only because people are going there.
Like,
and like, knowing, I think that's something that's helped us make a few decisions as well. Like, not just looking at the property, like looking at what the government's spending there. Like, are they upgrading airports? Are they upgrading hospitals? Are mining companies looking at doing stuff there? Like, like I like it. I think it's like a I don't know, it's better than looking at social media.
Yeah.
Overnight.
Property's what I know and love, and sometimes I love it too much, but the fundamentals that you've talked about are always, so if you're buying property, you want to make sure there's infrastructure in the town. So, if there's hospitals and universities and mining is around it, you don't want to be in a little town where the only thing is mining. There's but if you're in all those places you talked about, Brockhampton, Bundaberg, Roma, like there's infrastructure there. There's other industries. So, and so buying investments in those towns long term can give you both good yield and the price range allows people to get in when they might not be able to buy an investment property in Brisbane. So.
Yeah. This is all only our personal opinion as well.
Again, yeah, that's right.
Reiterating. You need to do your own homework on this type of stuff. But, mate, what else do we need to share with people that want to know more about brokering and financing?
Look, again, everyone's situation is different. One of the reasons I love my job, it's a bit like but every day is different. And there is definitely not a one size fits all in what I do. The thing I love most is sitting at a kitchen table with someone and understanding what has brought them to a certain point. Because that starting point, sometimes people have regrets and, they spend a lot of time saying, apologising almost for why they're in the situation that they're starting. But I say to people, we can never go back. Like, that doesn't worry me at all. All we can do is look forward. And the woulda, coulda, shoulda. With the benefit of hindsight, we'd all be geniuses, right? And multi-millionaires. But we don't have that benefit sitting there. And I say that.
But we do have the ability to reach out to people like yourself and ask questions.
Well, and move forward. Like, this is our starting point. It's actually good for me to understand how people get to that starting point. But then where to go next is always just, it's, like understanding what's important to them. Not everything's about money. Like, sometimes, people's decisions are more about lifestyle or catchment areas for the kids at school, or like there's a whole pile of different things that actually that a broker should be listening to, and not just about how to like make some money for you.
It's we haven't talked about risk. Like, risk is
there's no risk, mate.
And you've noticed,
you've got a risk profile that's.
I don't mind risk. I think risk is, you got to take risks to get ahead and reach goals and things. But like Camille has been, I think, like, since I've obviously met Camille and had family and done what we do, like, Camille's
good
completely
balance.
Against risk. So. And so I've come down in my risk limit, she's come up in hers, and we've really found a happy medium, which I think has made us work a hell of a lot better.
Look, that marriage counselling is extra thing is real, and often I'll sit at a table and people start in different, and again, it doesn't make one party right or wrong, and the challenge is, with the benefit of hindsight, like, someone will say we should be doing this investment or someone will say we shouldn't. And the challenge is someone will be right. Like, you'll look back and go, lucky we didn't do that, or wish we should have. And you just have to be gentle with each other because that whole, we don't have a crystal ball. And I tell people, like, I am very I have a personal risk profile that's lower than my wife's. She's the other side of the risk.
It's carrying the risk taker.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I thought it was you.
No, she's far more willing to do things. She's ready to do things quicker than I am.
Right.
So,
but it's I think it's really good having
a balance.
Like being able to take each
And often our
side.
partners are actually really, like, they've got these antennas that, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
like you listen to your partners.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you got anything else you want to talk about,
mate, I could bore you to tears any day of the week. Thank you, mate.
I really appreciate you coming on, mate, and sharing some stories. But I think the big takeaways are, like, for people out there that are maybe sitting on the fence and just unsure what to do, like, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
Talk to your, like, find a broker, talk to your accountant, talk to your lawyer, like, create that team, get everyone talking to each other. Because like, even just talking to you put us onto a really good, what's Carl?
Financial planner.
Yeah, financial planner. Like, so everyone's all working towards our best interests, like, to get the best outcome. So it's bloody fantastic.
Yeah, hopefully. No, thanks, mate. And look, again, it is. It's just, and again, everyone's situation's different. So what's right for you might not be, like, everyone's gonna, but having someone who's able to work through that with you, your personal circumstances, is what you're looking for.
So build your team and set some goals.
Pick someone's brain. Pick their brain. Like, just
and think
ask
a little
lots
bit
of questions.
long term. Don't just think about the next 12 months.
Good man.
No, look, so how can people reach out to you, mate, if they need a loan?
Oh, they ring you. 0448.
No phone numbers. Just Home Loans Made Easy.
Home Loans, mate. I don't have a webpage. Can't find me.
You're the busiest broker in the world. Seriously, that's because you do good work.
Yeah, I know. You can't find me. Look, if you just
well, send us you can reach out through the podcast, and we can pass on Jeff's details. I don't want your phone ringing constantly, mate, from our hundreds of thousands of listeners. So.
What?
Mate, look, really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on. If you do want to reach out to Jeff, then look, shoot me a message or reach out to the podcast, and we'll put you in touch with Jeff. He's the best in the business. But as always, look, if you like this podcast and you like what we talk about, like, share, comment, all those types of things, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Are you ready to build smarter, live better, and enjoy life? Then head over to livelifebuild.com/elevate to get started.
Everything discussed during the Level Up podcast with me, Dwayne Pearce, is based solely on my own personal experiences and those experiences of my guests. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. We recommend that you obtain your own professional advice in respect to the topics discussed during this podcast.